Hello and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into the timeless wisdom of a truly monumental figure in Korean history. Seriously, this is a man whose guide to leadership is just as powerful and relevant now as it was 2 centuries ago. I mean, listen to this quote. It just perfectly captures the sheer scale of the man we're talking about, Jeong Yak-yong, who also went by the pen name Dasun. And here's the thing, his life story isn't just his story. It's really a window into the brilliance and, the turbulence of Korea's entire Joseon dynasty.
So who exactly was this guy, Dasun? Well, to put it simply, he was a true polymath, a genius whose talents spanned this incredible range of disciplines. Calling him a Renaissance man is absolutely no exaggeration.
Just think of someone like Leonardo da Vinci, a master of both art and science. Well, Jeong Yak-yong was absolutely cast in that same mold. He was a philosopher and a poet, sure, but he was also a brilliant engineer and scientist who, just didn't see any boundaries between different fields of knowledge. Just take a look at the sheer breadth of his intellect. It's pretty amazing. He designed cranes and fortifications, he wrote medical texts on smallpox, composed thousands of poems, studied linguistics, and he even jotted down recipes. He was truly a master of, pretty much everything.
And his genius emerged incredibly early. He wrote this poem at just 7 years old. Think about that for a second. At an age when most kids are just learning to read, he was already contemplating the laws of perspective. It's just a stunning glimpse into a mind that was absolutely destined for greatness.
But this brilliant career filled with so much promise was about to take a really dramatic and tragic turn. And this is where the story starts to get, complicated. So, by the time he was in his late 20s, Jeong Yak-yong was right at the center of power. He was a trusted advisor to the reform-minded King Jeong, and he basically became the king's right-hand man, tasked with everything from designing new cities to advising on major national policy. And this timeline really shows just how quickly it all unraveled. In 1800, his protector, King Jeong, died suddenly, and almost immediately his political enemies seized their chance. They used his family's connection to the Catholic faith, which was very controversial at the time, as a pretext. Then, in 1801, they launched the Sinyu persecution, a massive political purge that saw him and all of his allies totally stripped of their power. He was banished to a remote part of the country for 18 long years. Can you even imagine that? A man at the absolute height of his powers, with so much to offer his nation, was just cast out into the political wilderness for nearly 2 decades. But this is where the story takes its most remarkable turn, because it's from the darkness of this exile that Jeong Yak-yong would produce his most enduring work, turning a devastating personal tragedy into a timeless gift for humanity. He wrote this monumental book called Mokminsimseo, and the title itself is actually so poignant. Mokmin means to care for the people. That's the core duty of a public official. But Simseo translates to a book from the heart. You see, since he was forbidden from actually governing, all he could do was pour his wisdom and his heart onto the page. Now, Mokminsimseo was actually one part of a trilogy. You had Gyeongseopyo, which was his grand blueprint for reforming the entire central government. Then there was Sinso, a manual on just and humane criminal justice. But Mokminsimseo was the most immediate and practical, a guide for local officials, the people who were on the front lines of governance. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are the core ideas of this incredible book? What did Jeong Yak-yong actually advise leaders to do? Well, first and foremost, this was not some kind of abstract ivory tower text. It was a field manual, a practical guide. It had detailed advice on everything from tax collection and agriculture to managing public works and administering justice. And it was all grounded in real-world examples of things he had actually witnessed. For Jeong Yak-yong, good governance really boiled down to 4 core principles. It all starts with personal integrity, just being honest above all else. Then you have to practice frugality, avoiding the kind of extravagance that separates leaders from their people. Third, genuine compassion. He stressed that an official must feel the people's suffering as if it's their own. And finally, an unrelenting fight to eradicate corruption, which he saw as a poison in the state. And this quote right here, it gets right to the heart of his philosophy. He believed that the greatest threat to a nation isn't some foreign invasion, but the internal decay that comes from corrupt and self-serving leadership. An official's first duty is always to the public good, not to personal gain.
So the big question is, why does a scholar from 200 years ago still matter today? What is it that makes his work so incredibly timeless?
Well, for starters, the world has certainly taken notice. In 2012, UNESCO celebrated his 250th birthday by naming him a world cultural figure. That puts him in the same company as thinkers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. It was a huge testament to his universal importance.
And that's really the whole point. The challenges he diagnosed, things like corruption, inequality, abuse of power, and leaders forgetting their duty of public service, these aren't just problems of the 19th century. They are the fundamental challenges of every society in every era, including our own. Which leaves us with one final thought to consider. If this brilliant mind were to observe our world today, with all of its complexities and all of its challenges, what kind of advice would he offer? What would be the central message of his book from the heart for the 21st century? It's a question that is absolutely worth pondering.
So what if I told you that one of the best guides to fixing a broken government wasn't written last year, but 200 years ago? Seriously, it's a leadership manual from 19th century Korea, written by an exiled scholar. And believe me, it holds some incredibly powerful solutions for the kinds of corruption and bad governance we still see today.
And this quote right here, this is the heart of it all. This is from the book we're diving into, Mokminsimseo, which means Admonitions on Governing the People. It's such a simple but deep truth, isn't it? A leader's power comes from the people, and just as easily as they give it, they can take it away.
Now, to really get why this book was such a bombshell, you have to understand the world it came from. We're talking about Korea's Joseon dynasty, a kingdom that was, to put it mildly, just drowning in corruption.
See, a governor back then wasn't just some local mayor. Oh no, they were basically a mini king of their district. They had absolute power over everything, the courts, the police, the military, you name it. Their word was law.
And get this, when a new governor got their post, they were handed a secret manual. But this wasn't a guide on how to serve the public, not at all. The Yak-yong was literally a playbook on how to steal. It was a step-by-step guide to embezzling funds and squeezing every last coin out of the district for your own personal gain.
And this is where it just gets unbelievably cruel. Officials came up with things like the skeleton tax, where they'd tax families for relatives who had been dead for years. They even had an infant tax, charging military fees for newborn babies. The system wasn't just broken, it was designed to prey on people. So you have to wonder, right? How on earth could anyone even begin to fix a system that's this rotten to the core? Well, that was the exact question on the mind of one of Korea's greatest thinkers. So, let's meet the man who decided to write a new playbook. His name was Jeong Yak-yong. Now, Jeong wasn't some academic locked away in an ivory tower. He was a deeply practical man, a reformer. And after getting tangled in political drama, he was exiled for 18 long years. It was during that time, living among everyday people, that he saw their suffering up close, and it lit a fire in him.
So, from exile, he wrote the Mokminsimseo, and he designed it to be the perfect antidote to that secret corruption manual, the Yak-yong. This was going to be the real playbook, one built on integrity, compassion, and just good practical governance. And what's amazing is how incredibly methodical it is. The book literally walks you through the entire career of a public servant. From the day you get appointed to the day you retire with your honor intact, it gives clear, ethical instructions for every step of the journey. And we're not talking about a few vague principles here. The book has 72 detailed subchapters. It covers everything a governor could possibly face, from how to collect taxes fairly to how to handle a natural disaster. It really was the ultimate guide to leadership. Okay, so what did this revolutionary guide actually say? Let's get into some of the specific and honestly game-changing advice he had to offer. Jeong had a very clear plan for a new governor's first day on the job, And the most interesting part is that it starts not with what you should do, but with what you absolutely should not do. So, rule number 1, no big, fancy welcome party. Your arrival shouldn't immediately become a financial burden on the very people you're there to help. It just sends the wrong message from the start.
And rule number 2, don't rush to meet with the richest and most powerful families in the area. Why? Because you need to avoid getting tangled up in their special interests before you've even had a chance to understand the district.
Instead, Jeong's first instruction was so simple and so brilliant. The very first thing you do is hang a huge, detailed map of your district on the wall. Before you make any decisions, before you meet anyone important, you first need to understand the land, the rivers, the villages, the people. Practicality before politics. I love that.
He was also a total pragmatist. He knew that expecting perfection from everyone was unrealistic. So he laid out these 3 grades of integrity. The best, first grade, was to live only on your official salary. But he recognized that even third grade, accepting a few small, unsolicited gifts but never asking for them or doing favors in return, was a massive leap forward from the outright theft that was happening.
And this quote just gets me. It shows his deep, deep empathy. He was telling officials, don't just be a bureaucrat. You have to be like a doctor, trying to figure out what's wrong with a child who can't speak. You have to look beyond the paperwork and find the real human pain.
And get this, in a move that was just light years ahead of his time, he argued for protecting the human rights of women in the justice system. I mean, for the early 19th century, that was an absolutely radical, incredibly progressive idea.
So, okay, this is all fascinating history, right? But why does a 200-year-old book from Joseon-era Korea actually matter to us sitting here today?
Well, it matters because his main ideas are completely timeless. Jeong believed that the fundamental job of any government, its core purpose, is to protect its people from 2 things: internal decay, which is corruption, and violence. And that's a lesson that is just as true and just as urgent today as it was back in 1818. And that kind of leaves us with a big question to chew on. In our world, with all its crazy, complex challenges, what timeless rules for ethical leadership should be guiding our leaders today? You know, what would a Mokminsimseo for the 21st century actually look like? What would be in their manual?